I am in beautiful Silverton, Colorado. Let me get my stupid head out of the way so you can actually see this. Where apparently they don't even get mad at you when you film right in the middle of Main Street. There's a planter here. I can get away with it. Look, see, it's not as tacky a move as it would seem like. This place is gorgeous. It's a mining town in the super high country of Colorado. And one of the things that I'm interested in whenever I go to an old town like this is to go and find what's left of the old school churches that were here in the first place. I think it's just wild that people came to territory this tough, and one of the first things they wanted to do was set up a church to have the community of faith and to worship God. And I found churches here that I think are pretty cool, so I thought I'd run over there and give you a look at that. And also, just as an added little bonus, you get to look at beautiful Silverton, Colorado. As I'm making my way over here to look at the first of these churches, I can't help but be struck by how cool this downtown is. It's got that 1800s Old West feel, and the preservation of this has been very intentional. Silverton started off as a mining boom community in the 1860s, and that boom lasted well into the 1900s, but somewhere in there, smart people around here figured out that tourism and access to the high country was going to be the long-term appeal of this town, so they did a really great job of preserving all of this beautiful Old West stuff here. In fact, they got the entire town designated as a National Historic Landmark District. As you can see, the summer here is beautiful, but when you sit at 9,300 feet in elevation and within 15 miles of 7 different 14,000-foot peaks, you can imagine that the winters are going to be a lot more challenging. I was told by some locals here when I was staying at this hotel that the snow had just come off a couple of weeks earlier in mid-summer. This is a breathtaking but inhospitable part of the world, and I'm excited to see what the churches who managed to carve out an existence here came out looking like. Okay, all of that said, here we are. This is church number 1. It's the first Congregational Church of Silverton, Colorado. It was founded in 1878 by Reverend Harlan Page Roberts. Between 1880 and 1881, they built the building that you are seeing here. It's been in continual service ever since, and they did that for $4,500 in 1880s money, which I think is pretty efficient. They couldn't initially afford a bell to let everybody know that it was time to come to church on Sunday mornings. So in lieu of that, Reverend Roberts would get out one of those big wobbly timber saws that the miners used and bang on it with a hammer to let everybody know that it was time to get started. The first Congregational Church here is part of the United Church of Christ, but that particular denomination did not exist back in the day when this church was founded. Now, at this point, the United Church of Christ is known for being a liberal-leaning, more mainline Protestant denomination. But this church was in a different place theologically in the early 1900s when they brought on a very famous Calvinist theologian to be their pastor between 1910 and 1912, a gentleman named Arthur Pink, who wrote the very influential 20th century theology book, Sovereignty of God. Just across the street on the same block is St. Patrick Catholic Church. Their first Mass was held at the Congregational Church in December of 1882, and then this building was eventually built in 1905. This looks like a church that was built with practical sensibilities and built stout and tough to endure the harsh environment and the harsh winters up here at altitude. That said, it still has some softer artistic touches, including this little shrine here, which is reminiscent of a much more significant shrine up the hill that we're going to go and check out in a minute. Right here on the main drag is the little Silverton Church of Christ. It was founded in 1959 as a seasonal vacation church and eventually grew into a year-round full-time church serving the community. They are self-described as a fundamental church that uses the Bible as its sole source of authority and understanding of what God wants men and women to align their lives with and to adopt the righteousness of God. This is Word of Life Fellowship. It's in pretty rough shape. I think this one might be closed. We'll look closer to see if anything's still going on here. Well, perhaps I stand corrected. There are chairs set up here. Yeah, the entryway looks good. No, I think they're still doing church. But that's awesome. They're still going. Services at 9 a.m. Rock and roll. The Silverton Church on the Hill was built in 1898, and it looks like it served a variety of different congregations from different traditions. I found a slide on the internet dated to April of 1966 that indicates that this used to be a four-square church. Now it's a Baptist church that is still conducting services and performing baptisms. All right, last stop on our little church tour of Silverton, Colorado, which I'm not really in anymore. That's the city down there. Look at this valley. So pretty. And up here, where it's a little more blustery, sorry for the noise, we got a shrine called Christ of the Mines. And they've got this overlooking the whole valley. And then there are these plaques over here. The top one says that this is erected in honor of Christ of the Mines by the people of Silverton to ask God's blessing on the mining industry of the San Juans. But then you look down at this bottom plaque, look at this. In thanksgiving to Christ of the Mines for deliverance of the entire workforce when Lake Emma flooded Sunnyside Mine June 4th. I went and did some digging, and it turns out that Lake Emma is a now defunct lake because in 1978, the miners here for years had been mining underneath it, and finally the roof of the mine gave way, and the whole lake drained into the mines, which would normally kill everybody who's working in there, but it happened on a Sunday night, so there was nobody there and nobody died. This shrine was put up by the local Catholic church, and full disclosure here, I'm not a Catholic, I'm a Protestant Christian, and sometimes I don't know exactly what to do when I go and visit a Catholic shrine. But I didn't feel so out of place at this one, I think because, one, Jesus is the centerpiece of the whole thing, and two, I love that this serves as a reminder that the local community gave thanks to God for sparing the lives of all of those miners. My wife and I are up here fishing and hiking and doing mountain stuff, and a lot of our adventures have been right up, can you see it? At the edge of the timberline where the trees quit growing. And yet even up there are a few trees right where the oxygen gets too thin who find a creative way to eke out an existence in a really inhospitable environment. I feel like it's sort of a metaphor for these churches. This is not the easiest place to put one of these. This is rough living up here. Well, at least it was during the mining era. The weather's still pretty brutal up here for most of the year. Yet, here they still are, finding a way to persist as a visual monument to the pervasiveness of the gospel in all corners of the earth, including the really remote ones. All right, thanks for checking out Silverton, Colorado with me and looking at some old churches. I'm Matt. Thanks for hanging out with me on my YouTube channel. Let's do this again soon.